Hello, welcome back to another tier list episode. Today going through one of my, I feel like I've said this to a lot of different classes, but I love D&D, and it's a fantastic game. So I'm going to say it again. Welcome to another one of my favorite classes, or at the very least the concept to one of my favorite classes. Although there's some things that need to be talked about when it comes to this class, and we'll get there. But yes, today we're going to be looking at part 1 and part 2 of my Ranger tier list. The goods, the bads, the uglies, etc, etc, etc. Alright, my tier list, it goes exactly the same as all the others. F tier means unplayable. No, that does not mean that this class is literally unplayable. It simply means that if you have a goal in mind, whatever character concept you have in your brain, there is a better subclass than the ones that are in F tier. That's it. D tier means that it is extremely situational. A lot of their abilities are just so, only useful in such a small percentage of encounters or situations that you're just better off picking something else. C tier means most of the time you're mediocre. Sometimes you can be good, but mediocre is going to be the name of your game. You're never the worst, but you're also never the best. You're just right down the middle. Then we got B tier, which is good choices, but it's maybe missing something vital. All right, there's something about it. There's a spell list. There's an ability that it comes in at a key moment. Perhaps it's your 3rd level ability or your 6th level ability. Something nice and early that just sucks so hard that it's just like, yeah, this class just it gets hit because of this lack of something. Just something is missing that could have made it great, and so it's B tier. A tier means solid choices. All right, you can't go wrong. You can pick any A tier and go out and have a blast with it. And then of course S tier is the best of the best. So it's basically taking, looking at all my A tiers, picking the one that I think is the most, the most useful, the one that can go into the most different situations, come out top. That is S tier. So let's go ahead and get on into it. Now, first off, quick note. We need to have a little conversation here. All right, we need to have just a couple of minutes discussing the Ranger in depth. And the reason we need to have this conversation is because the Ranger has always been kind of described as being one of the worst classes, or at the very least, one of the weakest link classes in Dungeons and Dragons. Now, the reason why that this is a thing is because there are 4 pillars of play when it comes to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. What that means is this. Every session you go into, you are going to be asked, your DM is going to set up a situation in which you are going to participate in one of these 4 things. Now, sometimes they could be a combination of 2 of them, it could be a combination of 3 of them, it could be a combination of all 4 of them. But the point is that there are 4 pillars of play. And those 4 pillars of play are mystery, all right, investigation. Then you have exploration, all right, going into the uncharted territories, all right, looking for things. Then you have social encounters, all right, the social pillar. And then lastly, you have the combat. The reason the Ranger has been for a while been kind of known as the bottom of the totem pole, the weakest link out of all the classes, is because almost any other D&D class, in fact every D&D class, you can look at and go, that would be a very good class to have in these particular situations. The only one that you look at and go, well, it's the best, no other class beats it, is the Ranger. The reason for this is because the Ranger has only ever been a class that really dominates the exploration pillar. Now you may ask, well, but didn't you just say that there's 4 pillars of play, and any class that's really good at those 4 pillars should be a good class? So how can you say on one side that this class is specializes in the exploration pillar, but then also say it's one of the weakest classes? It's because the exploration pillar is the weakest of the pillars. All right, you're trying to lift, a heavy ass, dresser up to your dorm room, and you got 3 buddies who are 6'3", 250 pounds and jacked out of their minds, and then you got the little 5'5" guy who's barely able to even, lift the 4th corner up. He's not really doing a whole hell of a lot. That's kind of the exploration pillar of D&D. And the reason this is because, you know, we've kind of gone away from past editions in which they used to do, you know, like the hex crawl system, where DMs used to have this big map of the world, you know, and the territories would be cut off into hexes or squares or whatever shape, you know, that you so desire. And part of what made D&D, you know, the D&D campaign in certain editions was basically just the party picking different sectors, different hexes, different quadrants, and then exploring them, finding what was there. But we've gone away from that. In fact, I guarantee you, you know, most D&D campaigns that you've been a part of, how many of them has your DM actually really, and I mean really, wanted you to monitor your food intake, your water consumption, your carry weight? How many of those campaigns did your DM say, the moment you walk out of a city, I'm keeping track of the dryness of your boots? You know, are you going to get trench foot where you're going? Do you have enough food rations? How much does a food ration weigh? And if you're fighting a big bad guy, every time you get hit, you're rolling a d20, and on a 1 through 2 or 1, 2, 3, you know, they hit your backpack and they cut through your food rations, and now your food is spoiled. It's gone. How many campaigns have you actually been a part of where that is a common occurrence, where that is a true pillar of play? And I bet you the answer is none of them. Maybe if you went into Rime of Frostmaiden, you maybe had a DM in that one particular module really try to push for a more resource managed game. But even then, I bet you, you know, they went something like, yeah, as long as you stop in town, and as long as you fill up on food rations, and as long as you buy your winter gear, that's it. You know, you can check that off the box, right? But that's not true. If I you know, I could wear the warmest clothes ever in D&D land. If my ass jumps into the fucking frozen, you know, Arctic Ocean, that wet, you know, unless that is waterproof gear, which it probably isn't, then it's going to get ruined, and yet we don't even think about that. So we have this weird situation where, yes, the Ranger is a very good class in the exploration pillar. The problem is that that pillar of play is the least used. The combat pillar is probably the biggest, followed very closely behind by the social pillar, and then maybe the investigation, problem-solving pillar in third. But those three are at least somewhat close together. This poor exploration pillar is like way the fuck, you know, in the back. And so because of that, we have this big discrepancy where almost any time you think that, oh, I want to play a ranger so I can be really good at doing this, you're going to find yourself that the only thing you would ever really say that about is hunting things, tracking things, finding things, and that's about it. After that, you know, the moment that you're like, hey, I want to be the best, you know, distance person. I want to have the longest distance and shoot things at the longest distance. For a long time, the ranger was getting out-damaged by the rogue. As soon as you gave the rogue, you know, a sharpshooter and a longbow, they were out-damaging every ranger. And there's no way in hell that your ranger was ever going to be a melee fighter. So this is how come the Ranger has always been known as kind of one of the weakest classes in the game, supposedly. Now, do I think that this has changed, especially after Tasha's? A little bit, yes. And I also think that as people have played more and more Ranger, and I think, in all honesty, I think as DMs, I would pose to you this thesis. I think that as time has gone on, I think DMs, I think we have just matured. And we've gotten better at realizing that we need to implement less combat to combat to combat to combat sessions, and instead we need to allow our players to explore. Sometimes we need to take the training wheels off and just go, yeah, I am going to monitor how much food you guys have every day. At least some general, you know, consensus of it, you know, some general, you know, generalization of it. And as soon as you start doing that, then Ranger comes in. And it can be something cool. So just kind of put that out there. Just be aware that that is why Ranger has kind of had this stigma that it has. But I think it's getting better. now that we as DMs, now that we're taking it more seriously and we're taking this, we're kind of finally nursing this fourth pillar back to its place where it should have been. But also, they've just come out with better rangers. All right, so let's go ahead and talk right on into it here. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the absolute worst fucking subclass, not just in the ranger school or in the ranger class, but I would argue that this quite possibly could be the worst class, the worst subclass in 5th edition. It is the single most useless, and it is so bad I didn't even want to write everything, because I was like, I don't even have the energy. This doesn't even deserve the energy to write everything down. And that is, of course, the Beastmaster Ranger. Beastmaster Ranger, F tier. We don't even need to fucking talk about it. To put this simply, if you're wondering, if you are the one lone person who's like, oh, the Beastmaster can't be that bad. I've heard it's bad, but it can't be that bad. Here's why it's bad, and it's all I need to go into. All right, this is the only point I need to make to tell you how bad this is. According to the Beastmaster Ranger, if I want to order my beast companion, which is what this class is all built around, to go and attack something, I have to use my action to do it. Even when I get my second attack, I still have to forego one of my attacks in order for them to take an attack action. And then all of the abilities after that, like your 7th level abilities, like it gives them like magical weapons. Like now they do magical damage. That is how bad we're talking. So whereas an ordinary archer, as a fighter at 5th level, would be able to pump out like fucking 30 to 40 points of damage using their weapons, you'll be lucky if you put out like fucking 18. Because you used your action to tell your animal to go over there and fucking do something. So yeah, that's that alone. All right, there's nothing else. I don't have to go into anything else about the Beastmaster. That alone lets you know this is the worst fucking class. Unless your hope is to just sit in a tree and whittle a fucking totem out of a branch, then sure, I guess. But I guarantee you that that's not it. So no, Beastmaster, avoid it at all costs. All right, D tier. Now, this is not to say that I think that this is not a fun class, because I think that this class could be fun, but I don't think it's very good. Alright, so my D tier here is the Fey Wanderer. At 3rd level, we have Dreadful Strikes. You augment your weapon strikes with mind-scarring magic, drawn from the gloomy hollows of the Feywild. When you hit a creature with a weapon, you deal an extra 1d4 psychic damage to the target, which can take this extra damage only once per turn. So basically, even when I get to the point where I can attack multiple times, they only take it once. At 11th level, this becomes 1d6. That is, without a doubt, one of the shittiest fucking scales. Like, this is like monk level shit of horrible scaling. 1d4 once per turn, and it converts to a d6 at 11th fucking level. God, this is awful. Alright, Otherworldly Glamour. Additionally, at 3rd level, your Fey qualities give you supernatural charm. As a result, whenever you make a charisma check, you gain a bonus to the check equal to your wisdom modifier, which minimum +1. In addition, you gain proficiency in one of the following skills of your choice: deception, performance, or persuasion. The reason why this sucks so horrible is, one, like I said, Dreadful Strikes, fucking joke. Secondly, this Otherworldly Glamour, if you are a ranger, thankfully your skills, your ASIs, your ability score improvements, they don't have to be super stretched out, but I guarantee your highest one's going to be your dex. I guarantee your second one's going to be your wisdom. Your third is probably going to be your constitution, so that you're not a fucking, pansy, getting blown on and fucking dying, right? That means charisma is probably going to be your 4th option. I have hardly ever seen a ranger character with a charisma above like a 10 or an 11. It's possible, but you're going to take a hit somewhere else in a ability score that would have benefited you so much better by having that versus the other. So I guess if your party is desperate to have a face man, someone who can do the talking and all of that shit, but also does not have a bard or anything else, and you are desperate to play a ranger, then sure. I guess that in that particular, very, very specific situation, then this ability might be worth something. But even then, that's pretty fucking bad. Alright, Beguiling Twist. At 7th level, the magic of the Feywild guards your mind. You have advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened. I've said this once, I've said this twice. Or just pick one of the fucking starting races that gives you advantage or just immunity to being charmed. How about that? In addition, whenever you or creature you see within 120 feet of you succeeds on a saving throw against being charmed or frightened, you can use your reaction to force a different creature you can see within 120 feet to make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. If the save fails, the target is charmed or frightened by you for 1 minute. You know, this is the definition of Uno reverse card. Okay. The target can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success. How many times are you being charmed and or frightened? How many times are you being charmed or frightened and succeeding? How many times are you being charmed and frightened, succeeding, and then having a high enough spell save DC to force that thing to then become intimidated and or, you know, be frightened and or charmed by you? I have the oddest suspicion that that specific criteria is probably not met too often. And the fact that this is using your reaction, which granted rangers, especially if you're doing a distance ranger, you probably have an open reaction. You're probably not using it for like opportunity attacks too much, but you get the point. This is just, it's a very specific ability that's probably not going to be used too often. And even when it is used, you're a ranger. Your spell save DC, unless you're willing to take that hit in like your dexterity or constitution to really get your wisdom up there to like 16, 18, etc. I bet you your DC is probably not that good. And it's not going to get much better as you go. So, like I said, very situational. Alright, Fey reinforcements. At 11th level, the royal courts of the Feywild have blessed you with the assistance of Fey beings. You know the spell Summon Fey, which is a good spell. I will say that. It is a decent spell. It doesn't count against the number of spells you know, and you can cast it without a material component. You can also cast it once without using a spell slot, and you regain the ability to do so when you finish a long rest. Whenever you start casting the spell, you can modify it so it doesn't require concentration. If you do so, the spell's duration becomes 1 minute for that casting. This is a fantastic ability. Summon Fey is a great ability, is a great spell. I have a druid in a campaign that I'm in that he uses it in every combat, and it is fantastic. It's a good little damage dealer. Its abilities are nice, such as its ability to get advantage on certain strikes, its teleporting abilities. It's really, really good. The fact that you can just summon it once a day without having to cost anything, fantastic. And the fact that you can basically shut off concentration and just let it do its own thing, you know, but then it only lasts for a minute, which is long enough for one fight. Just, this is great. But remember, we always got to keep things in context. We get this at 11th level. A lot of campaigns end in 2nd and 3rd tier, which means a lot of campaigns are over right around the time you unlock this. So you unlock this, maybe get to play a little bit longer, and then that's it. Alright, Curse of Strahd is meant to be over in tier 3. In fact, technically, I think you're supposed to be like level 10, 11 by the time you fight Curse, you know, by the time you fight Strahd. Same with Rime of Frostmaiden. Waterdeep is done by like tier 1. So, you know, you have all these modules in which basically, I'm trying to think of more of the recent ones. I don't know if Strixhaven really has a limit, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty low. What is that one? Wild Beyond the Witchlight, that is like supposed to be over by tier 2. Like it's up to like level 8 or 9. Like, I hope you're seeing what I'm getting at here. Like, this is a really cool ability, but it comes so late that it's just, you're going to find out that, okay, I unlocked it, and now campaign's going to be over soon. So, really, really good, but bad timing. Alright, 15th level, we reached our capstone. Misty Wanderer. You can slip in and out of the Feywild to move in a blink of an eye. You can cast a Misty Step without expanding a spell slot. There's a feat that does that. You can do so a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier. Okay, get little bonuses there. And you regain all expended expended uses when you finish a long rest. In addition, whenever you cast this Misty Step, you can bring along one willing creature that you can see within 5 feet of you. That creature teleports to an unoccupied space of your choice within 5 feet of your next destination. This is good. This is good. This is a nice, decent little ability. The problem comes, and I'm not trying to nitpick too much, but here's why this sounds really, really good, but it's very situational. As I said, there's already a feat that gives you Misty Step. Secondly, at 15th level, you have enough spell slots that Misty Step is not going to be too costly to you. Third, you're a ranger. Unless you're playing a melee-based ranger, which if you are, you bet your damn ass that your wisdom and your charisma are not your highest stats. You put a shit ton of points in your constitution. So the rest of this class is way suckier if you try to go melee versus, you know, the glass cannon, keep your distance, bow and arrow kind of ranger. So let's assume that you're probably playing this in the distance, you know, using our longbow kind of character. How often do you mean to tell me that someone is within 5 feet of you and needs you to use Misty Step to bring them somewhere? I bet you the answer is not too often. This is why this is in D tier. The 11th level ability, fantastic. Everything else is extremely situational. Hence, definition, D tier. C tier. We are hitting our Monster Slayer here in C tier. At Hunter's Sense, at 3rd level, you gain the ability to peer at a creature and magically discern how best to hurt it. As an action, you choose one creature you see within 60 feet of you. You immediately learn whether the creature has a damage immunity, resistance, or vulnerability, and what they are. If the creature is hidden from divination magic, you sense that it has no damage immunities, resistance, or vulnerabilities. So, just kind of gives the DM some protection there. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, and you gain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. This is nice, but it requires an action. Which means this is something that, you know, this is like you scout, right? Like you're the ranger, you scout, you see the monster as the rest of your party is coming up from the rear. You use an action when you have that ability to get a read on it, so that you're not having to use your first turn of action, you know, in combat to do this. Which is why this is very situational. All right, and the fact that you have to be within 60 feet of it means there's a very good chance it's going to sense that you're there. And this, you know, and you may find yourself like, I want to use my Hunter's Sense as soon as possible. And your DM goes, hey, I'm sorry, but like, he knows you're there. So we're rolling initiative, which means you now have to use your first action of combat to do this ability. And it's going to suck when I bet you half the time, most of the time, the DM goes, yeah, he's not immune to anything. He might be resistant to poison damage. He has no vulnerability. And that's it. That's all you get out of it. For wasting an action, that's what you get. So it could be useful. It could be beneficial. But situational. Alright, Slayer's Prey. Sorry, at 3rd level. You can focus your ire on one foe, increasing the harm you inflict. As a bonus action, you designate one creature you can see within 60 feet of you as a target of this feature. The first time that you hit this target now with a weapon, it deals an extra 1d6 damage from the weapon. This benefit lasts until a short rest or long rest is taken, and it ends early if you designate a different creature. This is way, way better than that pathetic little d4, d6 at 11th level that the Fey Wanderer gets. Now, yes, it requires a bonus action, so that means that, you know, if you are a ranger that's used to doing the usual, you know, bonus action, hunter's mark, action, blah, 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 you can still do that because that's basically what this is. This is a free hunter's mark, right? It's a hunter's mark that only happens on one of your attacks instead of 2. But think about it. If you're a ranger and you can knock this off first round and then second round hit it with a hunter's mark, you're doing an extra 2d6, you know, damage on every strike. That's a great sword hit, right? You know, like that is a good damage outlook. And the fact that there's no concentration here, there is no, you know, you get to do it once a short or long rest. So as long as, you know, you're willing to take short rest there, like you can have it multiple times throughout the day, this is not a bad ability. Alright, 7th level, we have Supernatural Defense. You gain extra resilience against your prey's assault on your mind and body. Whenever the target of the Slayer's Prey forces you to make a saving throw, and whenever you have to make an ability check to escape the target's grapple, you can add a d6 to your roll. I know it may not sound like a lot, but hear me out. At 7th level, and once you get to like 8th level, 9th level, etc., basically once you get to this point and on, thanks to the increases of your proficiency bonus, and thanks to you having a couple of ASIs, ability score improvements under your belt, you're going to find that the window of fail becomes much less and less as this goes on. What I mean by that is that early in the game, tier 1, which means levels 1 through 5, usually when you roll, there's such a small little bonus on your skill checks and your saving throws that when you fail hard. And when you succeed really hard. But when you fail really hard, and a D6 isn't going to save you. But once you hit that tier 2, and especially once you get closer and closer to that tier 3, once you figure out that, thanks to all the extra bonuses, now that I have a +4 in my proficiency instead of the +2, now that I've had a couple of ability score improvements to get my 13 to 14 and my 14 to 15, etc., you're going to find that you're failing. The distance between what you end up rolling versus the DCs is getting smaller and smaller. The average of a D6 is 3.5, 4, which means that on average, by the time you get to this point, levels 7, 8, 9, a D6 does actually matter. It will help out. And again, the fact that this is no concentration, the fact that it isn't, once a turn or something, it is whenever it forces you to make a saving throw. Or ability check to escape the grapple, but it's the saving throw that's really nice. Go up against the fucking Demi-Lich and get to add a D6 to every one of your rolls. This is pretty good. Alright, 11th level. You have Magic User's Nemesis. You gain the ability to thwart someone else's magic. When you see a creature casting a spell or teleporting within 60 feet of you, you can use your reaction to try to magically foil it. The creature must succeed on a Wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC, or its spell or teleport fails, and it is wasted. Once you use this feature, though, you cannot use it again until you finish a short or long rest. This is a nice little counter spell in your back pocket kind of situation. Now, I will say it's not as good as counter spell, because of the fact that, when you counterspell, it's a roll you make, which means you can benefit from things like the lucky feat, you can benefit from things like, inspiration. If you're a wild magic sorcerer, there are things that can benefit it. The fact that this is a DM rolling it means that it is a higher likelihood of them succeeding. And that's before we even contemplate things like, DM fudging. But it is nice to have. And the fact that it specifically says teleport or spell means that this could be a good little, back pocket way of just making sure that whatever you're trying to fight stays there. It's not bad. It could be better, but it's not bad. I wish it was more of a counterspell thing. I wish that you got to roll it so that you could benefit from having, benefits given to you. But it is what it is. It's why this is in my C tier. All right, 15th level, we've reached our capstone, and we have Slayer's Counter. You gain the ability to counterattack when prey tries to sabotage you. If the target of your Slayer's prey forces you to make a saving throw, you can use your reaction to make one weapon attack against the quarry. You make this attack immediately before making the saving throw. If the attack hits, you save automatically, in addition to the attack's normal effects. This is awesome. The reason this is awesome is because by 15th level, because of the fact that Ranger gets the +2 fighting style, by 15th level, maybe you got some, maybe you got some inspiration in there, maybe you got a magic item in there somewhere. You probably have a +10, +11, +12 to hit, which is way fucking better than whatever pathetic saving throw number you probably have. So the fact that you basically get to auto save if you hit, and you get a hit in there, this is good. All right, this is really, really good. It's, it's just, again, it's 15th level. So, you're getting it at either the tail end of your campaign, or you may never reach it on average. But it's good. But as soon as you take into account your Magic User's Nemesis ability, and once you take into account, your Hunter sense and shit like that, things drop down pretty quick. But it is C tier in my most humble of opinions. Alright, the last of my C tiers here is my Hunter. Alright, not to be confused with my Monster Slayer. Alright, my Hunter. Alright, Hunter's Prey. At 3rd level, you gain one of the following features. You can either choose Colossus Slayer, or you can choose Giant Killer, or you can choose Horde Breaker. If you choose Colossus Slayer, your tenacity can wear down the most potent of foes. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack, the creature takes an extra 1d8 points of damage once it is below hit point maximum. This is probably the one that you'll end up taking the most. The only thing that sucks about it is that you can only do this damage once per turn. Giant Killer. When a larger creature within 5 feet of you hits or misses you with an attack, you can use your reaction to attack that creature immediately after its attack, provided that you can see the creature. But this requires a large or larger creature within 5 feet of you. If you are a ranger who is using, say, a bow, you are making this attack with disadvantage because it is within 5 feet of you. So, probably not going to be used. Horde Breaker. Once on each of your turns, when you make a weapon attack, you can make another weapon attack with the same weapon against a different creature that is within 5 feet of the original target and within the range of your weapon. This is good, especially if you have a DM who is notorious for launching multiple enemies at you. Alright, 7th level, we have Defense Tactics. You gain one of the following features of your choice. Escape the Horde. Opportunity attacks against you are made with disadvantage. Pretty decent. Not horrible if you are a more melee hunter, more a melee ranger. Multi-Attack Defense. When a creature hits you with an attack, you gain +4 bonus to AC against all subsequent attacks made by that creature for the rest of the turn. This is probably the one that you're going to end up taking. Because I just find that odds are, if your DM has multi-attack, it's probably hitting you for most of them. Or, it's hitting, whoever it's targeted the first one, probably going to hit with the second or third, fourth, etc. Or Steel Will. You have advantage on saving throws against being frightened. So goddamn situational, I don't know why you'd ever choose that. But maybe you are. Maybe you got a DM who keeps throwing things at you that make you frightened. But, hey, it is up to you. 11th level, we have Multi-Attack. You gain one of the following features of your choice. I do kind of like this about the Ranger. I wish that more Ranger classes had this, like, hey, you get to pick. I don't know. I like whenever I get choices. Alright, the Volley Multi-Attack option. You can use your action to make a ranged attack against any number of creatures within 10 feet of a point you can see within your weapon's range. You must have ammunition for each target as normal, and you make a separate attack roll for each of the targets. This is really, really nice. I will say the problem is that it is only 10 feet, which isn't as big of an area as you think. But if your DM is notorious for just kind of like, hey, once I put out the battlefield, I kind of clump my things together. If your DM's kind of a clumper, then this could be really cool. This could be something that, like, hey, I use my action to make a ranged attack against all of these creatures, and nowhere does it say that it uses the entire attack action. It just says you can use your action to make a ranged attack against any number of creatures, which in my mind means, I can attack twice. So, do I get to use volley twice? I would think so. So, I think it could be useful. Alright, Whirlwind Attack. You can use your action to make melee attacks against any number of creatures within 5 feet of you, with a separate attack roll for each target. So maybe this is. The more I read it, the more I'm like, I think, it is saying you can use your action to make, instead of you can use one of your attack actions. So I think that is. I do take that back. Volley and Whirlwind, instead of doing 2 attacks, because at this level you would have 2, it is you can attack all things in this area. Okay, that makes more sense to me. Okay. I was like, this sounds like a really broken ability. Why did I put this in C tier? Like, this alone, combined with our third, like, I would think that would move it up to, like, at least B tier. Now I remember. Okay. Alright, 15th level, we have Superior Hunter's Defense. You get one of the following features of your choice. Either Evasion, when you are subject to an area of effects, such as a Red Dragon's Fiery Breath, or a Lightning Bolt spell that allows you to make a dex save. You take half on a failure, and none if you succeed on the saving throw. This is great. This is why people play rogues, right? Is for this effect. Alright. Stand Against the Tide. When a hostile creature misses you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to force that creature to repeat the same attack against another creature other than itself of your choice. Or Uncanny Dodge. When an attacker that you can see hits you with an attack, you can use your reaction to have the attack's damage against you. My problem is that Uncanny Dodge you would get if you just go 2 levels into Rogue, and there are some rogues that 2 levels, like, that's all you need. Like, you take 2 level, you take a 2 level dip into Rogue, and you can get a lot of shit out of it. In evasion, I think you get at like level what, 3, 4, maybe 5. I think at 5. So it's not bad. If you find yourself already like past level 11 in a hunter ranger, I can understand. I can see why it's like, hey, I'm not going to multi-class. This far, I'm going to keep going with the ranger. But you know, for it being a 15th level capstone, the fact that if I would have just started off as rogue and gone a couple levels into rogue, I would just have some of these abilities and not have to choose which one. This is my C tier. And it's my C tier for a reason. Alright, I'm going to end it here. Part 1 will be over with this. Come back and check in for part 2 of my Ranger tier list, where we will be looking at our Bs, our As, and of course, our all-powerful S rank. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope maybe you learned something. And most of all, I hope to catch you next time.